Welcome everyone to Couch Potato Diary. Happy Wednesday. My name is Peter Klein. Thank you very much for tuning in today. Coming up on the show, we have a big trade from the National Football League as the Kansas City Chiefs load up. Kinda. Also, we have power rankings for the week. It is a UFC 308 fight week, and so today we are going to look at, take this as an opportunity to look at the other big stories happening in the world of mixed martial arts right now, mainly the UFC, but a little bit outside as well, and the Calgary Flames somehow continue to keep winning. So we will get into all of that as this show rolls along today. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Let's start by talking about some hockey. So the Calgary Flames just keep winning, hey? That's just going to be a thing they continue to do as they pick up a victory over the Pittsburgh Penguins last night. For more of my thoughts, you can check out Game Over Calgary as myself and Matt broke it all down on the Game Over Calgary YouTube channel last night. In fact, I will just quickly, oh no, that's the next game. I'll quickly throw that one into the chat for those of you who are checking this one out live. But yes, for the Flames, again, this one, this I think is going to look more like what Calgary Flames wins look like for the upcoming season. They battled. They played really hard. Right? Like, there was no question about the effort or anything like that. They had some really good chances. Pittsburgh's goalie, Nedeljkovic, actually looked quite good. And they created a few opportunities, but defensively, they were doo-doo. And significantly worse than doo-doo, I would say. There were so many great chances that Pittsburgh got. I think looking at natural stat trick last night, it was 12-4 high danger chances in favor of the Pittsburgh Penguins. Like, the better team did not win that game last night. And heading over, let's take a look quickly. I forgot to look at this before we got this thing going. Let's look at the money puck deserve to win-o-meter from last night. As, oh boy, a lot of scrolling, a lot of games last night, hey? But let's go down to it. Oh man, they have a lot of things on here right now. Okay, so it's loading up. We'll get to it in a second. But for the Flames, like I said, this is what it's going to look like. They're going to have to really try to battle for everything they get offensively. Their goaltending is going to need to be strong because the defense isn't that great. And the thing that was a little bit concerning last night was some of the not great defense was coming from the guys who you would expect to be great defensively in Rasmus Andersson. Now, offensively, he comes up with the goal. He does the staring dagger thing, and it's amazing, and we love it. But I just worry about putting that kind of workload on Dustin Wolf. And I think that is the biggest positive coming out of this game. And Matt and I discussed this on Game Over, is that you have a young goalie who was just pushed to the absolute limit by this hockey team, a talented hockey team in the Pittsburgh Penguins, and he, for the most part, stood his ground. The second goal, the Raquel goal, doesn't look amazing. It just kind of squeaks through there and is kind of gross. But I think aside from that, like he definitely kept out way more really good high danger chances than he allowed that one to go through. So it's a net positive, I think, for Dustin Wolf. And that is the biggest thing coming out of this, is that Dustin Wolf continues to show that any concerns about him not being an NHL goalie, I think were a little unfounded. And he is going to continue, I think, to build that momentum up and continue to roll as the Flames goaltender. Dan Vladar has been awesome as well. And it is a good spot to be in where both of your goalies are playing really, really effectively right away. A couple other things that kind of stood out for me that game. I do really enjoy what I keep screwing them up. Backlund and Coleman did last night. I thought, and this season, I thought offensively they were great. I thought they did a really good job of creating great chances every time they were out there. The Backlund, Coleman, Zari line was the only line that had a above 50% expected goals for last night. They were the only ones that were creating more opportunities than they were giving up. And again, I do want to say, like, it feels like I'm being a little bit negative. But like I said in the beginning, this is what this Flame season I thought was going to be from the beginning, and certainly I think is still going to be like as the year goes on. I thought, as they are currently constituted, the Calgary Flames played about as well as you could ask them to. It's just the Pittsburgh Penguins, objectively, are a better hockey team than they are. And treated the Flames as such everywhere but the scoreboard last night. And they had a pretty dreadful first period and came out in the second period and just were like, oh, you guys think you're going to get the puck this period? How cute. They just dominated, I thought, Calgary. And so again, like all these things that I'm saying, I don't think anyone on the Flames played particularly on the Flames offense anyway, played particularly poorly. It's just that they aren't as good as the Penguins are, and the Penguins demonstrated that. But I thought back when Coleman and Zari, they, again, created these opportunities in the way that the Flames are going to have to get their opportunities all season long. Really strong work on the boards, funnel it toward the front of the goal, and get some chances. And Zari and Coleman had a couple of grade A scoring chances, but it is just every time they are out there doing that, it is leading to something really, really good for this team. Kadri and Kuzmenko, Matt asked me about it last night. I still think it's something you stick with and still kind of build that chemistry. It just feels like they're so close so many times. They create one or two opportunities. It's like, okay, this is it. It just needs to get that consistency now from a Flame standpoint. But now they have another tough test in the Carolina Hurricanes, who beat the Edmonton Oilers on the Frozen Frenzy night or anything like that, or whatever it was called, sorry. And it's going to be kind of more of the same. I would be interested to see what kind of tweaks are actually made to the lineup. With Rooney potentially coming back, I kind of would rather see Kirkland stay in the lineup and he stay on a line with Rooney and Lomberg, and maybe Klapka goes back to the American Hockey League. Not that he's been bad, but I just think Kirkland has earned his opportunity to stick around on this team for now, and I would like to see that be rewarded. And so even if you just put Rooney on the wing and let Kirkland continue to develop as a National Hockey League center, I think that's probably the way you would want this thing to go right now for the Flames. And then maybe you bring in a Hanley defensively just to give maybe a little bit more structure and a little more soundness to this game. And also, it's now 7 games in a row that he hasn't played. You would just, if he is going to be an emergency option for you, you would like for him to have played a game sometime this month. So that might be something that I would potentially look at as well. But overall, a win's a win for the Flames, and the vibes immaculate around the Calgary Flames right now. And I do also just quickly want to say that I really, like, last night was fun with the Frozen Frenzy thing. It does kind of set off the schedule a little bit for the next couple of days, right? Like one game on Monday, one game on Wednesday, and then mucho game on Tuesday and Thursday. It does kind of throw things off a little bit, but I don't think that's a bad thing. One of the things that I have had trouble with the NHL throughout the years is that obviously here in Canada, Saturday night's a big night, right? Like, it is hockey night in Canada. That is the night of all the big games. And so if you want to have your one night, that's fine. But the NFL now has got 3. And I mean, like, they've done they have a game on every night of the schedule at some point this year, except for a Tuesday. So they are starting to kind of branch out a little bit. And so I think that you need, for lack of a better term, gimmicks throughout the year to make some nights feel special. You know, like the NBA, one of the things I still ingrained in my brain, and I don't know if this is something that was just, I can't imagine it's just a me thing, but when the NBA was on TBS and TNT back in the early 2000s, like for Raptor fans, when Vince Carter was really doing his thing and getting them on national television, those games during the week were on TBS and TNT, and they had the commercials that they were all in like this jazz bar or something, and Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. They were doing this thing. I'm going to have to find that commercial now. But they built it up and made that a special day. And I think Sportsnet and the NHL have tried some things with that. They have tried, it's Wednesday night hockey. And I think for Canadians, they've done a pretty good job of that. But I think, what was it, Wednesday night rivalry night or something that they tried on NBC Sports or whatever that network was called at that time. They have tried to make things feel like during the week, this is a special thing, and it hasn't really clicked. And so if you want, just like, this is a marquee game on Monday, this is a marquee game on Wednesday, but then Tuesday, Thursday, it's for the hockey fans. These are the days where we're going to go crazy, and we're going to have a Frozen Frenzy on an ESPN, and we're going to have Ice Chips or whatever the fuck it's called on Amazon on Thursday, and you're going to be able to follow all of this hockey, and it's going to be insane. I think having stuff like that to make these things stand out, instead of like, okay, well, they're playing on Tuesday, so guess it's Tuesday. And you do fall into a trap where you don't want every day to feel like, oh my God, it's motherfucking Friday night hockey, baby. Like that, at some point, not everything can feel special because then nothing feels special, right? That's almost the exact definition of special. So you do have to kind of balance how often you do these things to try to make it click. But I do think having big nights like this and nights like what tomorrow is going to be in the NHL are just fun. And it was fun being on social media with everyone shit talking about their teams and doing all those things. It would have been great if some of the games didn't suck, but because I think actually quite a few of them weren't all that awesome last night. The Flames 4-3, the Hurricanes with a good comeback. You have a couple of close games in here, but then there's the 4-1, 5-1, 8-5, 7-2, 6-2, Leafs, 6-3, 4-0, 4-0, 6-1. You had a lot of blowouts in there. And now, when you have 16 games on a schedule, just the law of big numbers, some of them are going to be blowouts. But it would be nice if a few more of them were a little bit more competitive, but I do think that it was a fun night for the NHL, and I think a really fun thing to keep doing going forward. So that's the story from the NHL. Let's get into some football talk now, as one of the biggest teams makes a big trade. So the Kansas City Chiefs have finally made a move for a wide receiver, as they have acquired DeAndre Hopkins. I am realizing now that I haven't even looked to see what is going back the other way. I am assuming it's not a lot. That is just kind of my general thought. ESPN sources, Chiefs finalizing a trade for DeAndre Hopkins. So it's done, basically. The Titans would receive, a conditional 4th round pick in a trade that is expected to be completed on Wednesday. Do we know what the conditions on the pick are? No, we don't. Okay, so 4th round pick for DeAndre Hopkins. So basically, you are getting him for free. With all due respect to all the lovely 4th round picks out there, the Kansas City Chiefs will, with a smile on their face and a tear in their eye, give up that pick for DeAndre Hopkins. You can question, what does DeAndre Hopkins have left? And that is a very valid question. He has been banged up out in Tennessee all season long. And I don't think this was a Devontae Adams, oh, my hamstring. Oh, wow, this crisp New York air has all of a sudden just put my hamstring back together in the most miraculous of ways. It is a miracle and nothing less. I don't think that's it. I think Nuke Hopkins was legitimately banged up. And so to assume that you are getting DeAndre Hopkins from a couple of years ago to go in there and just start stealing the show is not going to be the case. But what he does provide is a little bit more reliability for this passing offense. And with Patrick Mahomes, he tends to be a little bit gunslingery, right? Like, he is a few plays here and there and probably a couple less Super Bowl rings away from having the reputation of being a little bit wild and a little bit out of control. And he had that reputation at Texas Tech, and he said that because, we were down, like, our defense couldn't stop anything. So I had to make a lot of really aggressive plays and try to do that. This team isn't that. It is the exact opposite. This team doesn't allow anything. And so Mahomes has just done what he has needed to do to pick up those wins. And now with DeAndre Hopkins, you just have something a little bit more reliable, so that when it's 3rd and 6, you have Travis Kelce out there, and when he gets all the attention, your next best option isn't, with all due respect, Noah freaking Gray, who was the leading receiver for the Kansas City Chiefs in their win on Sunday against the San Francisco 49ers. So is Nuke going to be back to being one of the top 2 or 3 wide receivers in the National Football League now that he has changed addresses from the Tennessee Titans and Will Levis Island into the penthouse that is Patrick Mahomes Terrace? No, that's not going to be the case. But what he does provide is either a little bit more talent for defenses to have to be aware of, so that Travis Kelce doesn't have 8 guys on him at one time, or he provides an option so that if defenses do that, then you have a guy that you are trusting to go out there and just make the catch. And if it's a contested catch and Mahomes is under pressure, he knows he can throw it up to that guy and he can go up and make a play, because I think Hopkins still has that kind of, for lack of a better term, dog in him. So I think this is a great move for Kansas City. It is not Amari Cooper to Buffalo. I don't even think it is Devontae Adams to the New York Jets. But for what Kansas City needs, I think this is exactly the type of thing. They have the busted out deep downfield guy in Xavier Worthy, right? Like they have that guy where it's like, if we want to throw it a billion yards down the field, we got the quarterback and the guy to do that. And if you just need like quick possession things up the field, like, yeah, you have Travis Kelce for that, but it is nice to have now an intermediate target that defenses do have to keep an eye on. And it just, I think, kind of rounds this offense out and makes it a little bit more complete and gives Patrick Mahomes just anything to work with on the offensive side of the ball. Although, knowing Kansas City's luck, Hopkins will probably get hurt in the next 2 to 3 weeks. But like I said, he's already been banged up. For the Titans, it is, I think, more of a signal of the white flag. Although, again, it's not like this team was going to do anything with a stellar offense or anything like that. But Hopkins wasn't a big part of it anyway. So I guess you get a 4th round pick for something that wasn't really affecting your team in any great way. Anyway, like, let's see, what are... no, I guess I have the news story up. I can probably just click on that, hey? For those of you who are watching this on YouTube and listening on podcast from later, I absolutely could have cut this stuff out, but I'm not going to. Yeah, Hopkins has 21 targets this year. And again, to recap, they've played 6 games. So now I don't think, has he played in all of them? No, he missed 1. So his targets here this season, 2, 7, 4, 6, 1. So you are not really taking out, like, there isn't oh my God, look at all these targets that are now available with the Tennessee Titans. My God, there's this bounty of options for another receiver. That ain't this. That this is a guy who was brought in to kind of be a veteran and help out this offense, who has been banged up, and an offense that needs a lot more help than I think they thought it did. And so that I think it makes it kind of an easy, just like, yeah, we'll take this piece out. We'll get a 4th round pick for this. Hopefully that 4th round pick turns into something awesome, and we can do a trade tree in a few years when the Tennessee Titans are parading down whatever street they would parade down for a Super Bowl win. But for now, I think that this is just a slight admission for the Titans that, yeah, this ain't working, and let's try to get a couple of pieces now around this. From a fantasy football perspective, I had finally bit the bullet and was like, you know what? It ain't happening for DeAndre Hopkins. I'm dropping this guy. And then immediately that trade happened. So if you have someone who's struggling in your fantasy leagues and you want them to all of a sudden have a great spot, let me know. And I'll go out, I'll pick them up, and I'll drop them so that it can help you. I need to use my powers for good here on Couch Potato Diary. But I don't think that this turns him into a overly dynamic fantasy football option right now. Like, let's look. Where does Fantasy Pros have him for rest of season stuff right now? In terms of rankings, I thought I just clicked rankings, so I'm going to have to find this. In season, rest of season, wide receiver. There we go. Okay, and now Hopkins. So right now, Hopkins is ranked 39th by Fantasy Pros. And so I think that they have moved him up 6 spots. Is that what that means? Anyway, not important. So the area that they have him in right now, he is just above Khalil Shakir, Christian Kirk, Christian Watson, Michael Pittman, and Jawan Jennings. I think that is fine. He is below Jordan Addison, Xavier Worthy, Lad McConkey, Jacoby Myers, Darnell Mooney, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Tank Dell, and Puka Nacua for rest of season rankings. And honestly, I think that is kind of where he should be ranked. If you wanted to move him up there a little bit, like leapfrog him over the group of Addison, Worthy, McConkey, Myers, Mooney, I think Mooney would be the cutoff there, just based on how proficient that offense has been out in Atlanta and how many opportunities there have been for Mooney so far. I think that this is a chance to move him up there a little bit, but I don't think this kind of outweighs that situation. Now, I do think that there is an opportunity for kind of aggressive enhancement if you see a game even where it's like, oh, this is working. Then you can kind of move him up into the, I think, DJ Moore, Cooper Kupp, Garrett Wilson territory a little bit fantasy-wise. So I don't think this means you need to go out and try to acquire a DeAndre Hopkins or anything like that. I think, honestly, quite the opposite. If you're a DeAndre Hopkins owner and you've been kind of hanging on, just you had an extra bench spot or whatever, honestly, I think there's an opportunity that you can maybe like, hey, man, he's off with Patrick Mahomes now. You want him? Like, I wasn't really going to use him, but you can have him. I'll just take a running back off your hands. Don't worry about it. fine. And I think so. I think honestly that this makes him more a trade away candidate than a trade for candidate. Just try to take advantage of the name identity that is already there to go along with the positive headlines here. And in Tennessee, I don't think this changes anything. Like we said, it's 21 targets in 5 weeks. I don't think all of a sudden now you are going to see some young receiver who we've never heard of step into the limelight. And I don't think this means, oh, wow, more targets for Calvin Ridley to fly over his head. It makes Will Levis or Mason Rudolph even less startable than they were before, and they were basically at zero going into it. So, yeah, I don't think it changes too much on their side. But get your questions in from a fantasy football perspective here and we'll answer them, or anything you want to talk about. Get those chats in here on Twitch for those of you who are watching live. All right, it is now time for our run through the National Football League. It is time for NFL Power Rankings. These are your NFL Power Rankings as we get ready for, oh my God, is it week 8? Are we at week 8 already? Because that would mean it's week 8. You know, we only get 17 of these in the season, or 18. Oh yeah, we only get 18 of these in the season now. Sorry, kicking it old school. So the fact that we're at 8 means we're almost at the halfway point, which means I'm very sad that the football is going away. Like the CFL is getting to its best part with playoff time. College football is ramping up for a playoff that we've never experienced before, and the NFL is in high gear. And I'm already like, oh, but February. So that's how my brain works. Anyway, let's get into the power rankings. Starting at 32 and working all the way up to number 1. Coming in at number 32, they are the Carolina Panthers. Why? Because they're bad. They just got absolutely annihilated last week by Washington 40-7, even after Jaden Daniels exited the game. Marcus Mariota just did awful things to this Carolina defense, and we are back to this being a very bad football team again. At 31, it is the New England Patriots. You have your coach calling your team soft, and then you have your former coach being like, yeah, I don't think it's the players who are the problem. So that's awesome. And kind of a shitty thing to do, and probably shouldn't be doing that if you're Bill Belichick. But also, if you're Bill Belichick, I don't think you care too much. So he's probably okay with it. It's bad in New England, and Drake May being in there gets it a touch more vibey, but no, it's bad, and they have a long way to go. At 30, it is Cleveland. When the biggest headline around your team is how much your fans cheered when your starting quarterback's leg exploded, things probably aren't going great. And then when you consider, that might be an upgrade, it's even worse. But yes, no, it is bad out in Cleveland. And as we approach the trade deadline, I wonder how active they are going to be. At 29, it is the Vegas Raiders, another putrid effort against the Los Angeles Rams this week, and it is so clear that a lot of the answers aren't with this coaching staff or on this team at all. At 28, the Tennessee Titans. They just made the move sending DeAndre Hopkins out to the Kansas City Chiefs. I said before in the trade analysis, I don't think that this is necessarily a full waving the white flag or anything like that, although I have them as a bottom 5 team in the league, so might be. It has not clicked. Specifically offensively, it has really not worked in the way that I thought it would. And honestly, defensively, they were in that game in the first half, and then the defense just stayed on the field and got their brains beat in by Buffalo. I think this was really this team really doesn't have it moment. And, we've had a couple of those now. But this team, I thought that the names that they added this season were better than, and honestly, I think they have been. I think the quarterback is a major issue. And when we look at kind of building that foundation around a young quarterback, I think that they have, to a certain extent, done it. At least they've tried to, that they have brought in, They've used back-to-back first-round picks on offensive linemen. They have brought in a veteran running back to pair with your young running back, who still seems kind of good. You have brought in a couple of interesting wide receiver options anyway, in Hopkins and in Ridley, and that goes along with Burks, who has been hurt, but after you moved A.J. Brown, that was kind of supposed to be the next one, and that one hasn't necessarily checked out, but they have at least, the point I'm trying to make, is they have at least tried to build around this quarterback, and it certainly seems like this quarterback ain't it. And so while I have cautioned against Carolina just using a first overall pick again on a quarterback, if the Tennessee Titans are in a spot where they would be drafting a quarterback, I think they should. Now, obviously, these power rankings do not reflect standings, but let's just say for a moment the standings finish as this, with Carolina, New England, Cleveland, Raiders, and Tennessee. New England's not taking another quarterback there. I do think Carolina will, even though I don't think they should. The Raiders, I think, definitely would. I think the Browns probably would as well, to try to offset those quarterback costs there of getting Deshaun Watson the hell away from your team. And so that, I do think, leads to a bit of a tough situation now for Tennessee. Presuming they have the 5th overall pick, that would be the 4th quarterback off of the board in that spot. And just doing some brief looks at this draft, I don't know. Like, Ewers seems pretty legit. Shedeur Sanders, I don't think we're ever going to know, given that situation in Colorado, if he is legit, and then maybe Carson Beck, and so, or Cam Ward. So I guess there are kind of 4, but the last 2, it's like, well, no. And so it's going to be an interesting spot for the Tennessee Titans, which is why I think if I'm Carolina, I would much rather kind of move down in the draft, get a few assets back, and just kind of follow the model that we helped Chicago do. Let's try to do that instead. But yeah, your bottom 5: Carolina, New England, Cleveland, the Raiders, and the Tennessee Titans. At 27, it is Miami. A chance for some aggressive expansion here, with Tua Tagovailoa potentially checking back in the lineup this week. But yeah, it's been ugly football for the last little while, and they have just been dreadful. At 26, it is the LA Rams. They got a win against a bad football team, so they don't move up that much. At 25, it is the Jacksonville Jaguars. Congratulations, you got a win against one of the worst teams in the league, but there is still a lot of work left to be done. At 24, it's the Giants. They got just dummied this week by the Philadelphia Eagles, and when you get beat up by a division rival who now have your former best player, that sucks. And that was, like, morally speaking, one of the worst losses of the weekend, because your defense is supposed to be your calling card, and the guy who you used to have just absolutely shred them to pieces. So it is a bit of confirmation that the Giants weren't in a spot that they should have been spending that money on a running back anyway, but B, a confirmation that you didn't necessarily spend the money that you saved on him in the right way, because holy hell, was that too easy for the Eagles on Sunday. At 23, it is the Indianapolis Colts, who continue to exist as just a team right now in the NFL. At 22, it is the Denver Broncos. A big win on Thursday night, and just feeling a little bit more and more legit. Legit in terms of things are developing, not necessarily legit in terms of hey, watch out for the Broncos in the AFC or anything like that. At 21, it is Chicago. At 20, it is Dallas, both teams on a bye this week. At 19, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and things really fall apart late in that game against Baltimore. I mean, things fell apart all game against Baltimore, and I think we have seen now how vulnerable this defense is to various passing attacks. And now they're going to be vulnerable against defenses as well, because Chris Godwin is out for the year with an ankle injury. Why he was playing with a minute to go is beyond me at this point, but they're in a tough spot now because Godwin is out for the season. Evans is out until after their bye, so he's not coming back until week 12. So they are in a very, very difficult spot right now if they are going to try to build off of what was a decent start in the NFC South. At 18, it is the Chargers. That's a tough loss on Monday against the Arizona Cardinals. It's just the offense gets stuck in the mud a little bit, and that's something they're going to correct as things go along. At 17, it's Arizona. I remain unimpressed by the Arizona Cardinals. After I kind of built them up in the preseason a little bit, that was not one of the better calls. At 16, it's New Orleans. They got just pistol whipped on Thursday night against Denver. It sounds like they're getting a little bit healthier, so that keeps me from plummeting them down a little bit. But if we were just going off of a 1 week sample, then yeah, like with the injuries they have, that's legitimately one of the worst teams in football. And so Shaheed's gone for the year. If Carr doesn't come back soon, and if Olave doesn't come back soon, this thing spirals out of control very quickly out in New Orleans. At 15, it's Cincinnati. They got a win against Cleveland, not overly impressive. And so this is 2 weeks in a row where someone has beat Cleveland, and the best thing we can say about them is At 14, it is the New York Jets. Another difficult loss for the Jets has them. They were right on the cusp of the top 10. Now they come back into this middle area. At 13, it is Atlanta. They were in the top 10 and they get bullied down by Seattle. Maybe should have been a couple of spots more, but again, this is more a statement on how mid a lot of these teams are in the NFL, that does not necessarily bump them back too far down, given how much of an ass kicking that was at the hands of Seattle. At 12, it is Pittsburgh. Russell Wilson looked good and looked competent in this offense, and that defense continues to be, I think, the best in football, and they gave Aaron Rodgers and co. some real issues and created a lot of interesting talking points out in New York this week. At, where are we at? At 11, the Seattle Seahawks. I am way too quick to buy into the Seattle team. The second things start to look good a little bit, it's like, yeah, there they are. There's the Seattle I got. There's the Seattle that I picked to win the division. There is the Seattle that I think is going to roll on their way to a postseason performance. The defense that was getting healthier, and it's looking good. And that was kind of the key to what I thought this season was going to be, is that the offense I thought would have a little bit more dynamic play calling, and the defense, a few of those talents were going to take steps forward, and we are now finally seeing that on the defensive side for Seattle. At 10, at San Francisco, didn't bump them down too much. Losing Brandon Ayuk for the season does sting, but we have seen Jawan Jennings is a fine replacement. I still think this is a top 10 team in the league. At 9, it's Philadelphia. They get a big win against the Giants, as we discussed before. Still too many things that didn't look overly impressive for me to bump them up too much. At 8, it's Washington. They basically got like a non-conference game thing that they could just kind of throw. Oh yeah, well, we're playing Div 2 team, so we're just going to go out there and beat them up. That's basically what it was from a college football standpoint, right? So they get a win. They don't move down too much. At 7, it's Houston. I am now officially worried about the Houston Texans. I am officially in a spot where I think that this team I don't think it's irreparable. I don't think, oh wow, CJ Stroud just actually sucks now. I don't think any of those things. I do think that this is a team that just has taken a slight step back. And now without their number one receiver for the next couple of weeks, still, I think that the offense becomes a little bit more difficult. And I think we're starting to see a few offensive play calling issues there as well. At 6, it is Green Bay, and I am now realizing that I have Green Bay in here twice, but I do know who I missed in there, so it's fine. So I probably didn't need to tell you guys that, but I just need you to know how awesome I am that I picked that on that really quickly. But yeah, for Green Bay, like Jordan Love, I think because of how things turned around last year and how Jordan Love, like we just kind of have this thing set in our minds that Jordan Love's just great. He's just one of the top quarterbacks in the league. Don't worry about it. And it's now, we've had a few bad games now there for Jordan Love, and I picked him up in the Vampire League. Someone dropped him when he got hurt, and I was like, well, look, this is I was rolling Justin Herbert out there, so this is not Jordan Love is killing the Vampire League team, but he's kind of alternated good week, bad week, good against Minnesota, which is great. That's a good defense. That's tough to do well against there, and then good against Arizona. That not a great defense. But then it's against the Rams, who I still don't view as this high-level defense. He 224 yards, a couple touchdowns, and a pick. And then against Houston, who again, like I think is pretty good. I guess I shouldn't be like, oh well, the Houston Texans. Like no, the Texans have a good defense. But still, 220 yards and 3 touchdowns with a couple of INTs. Like they ain't that good. And so I think that maybe the perception of Jordan Love is a little bit different than what he actually is. And now looking at his schedule the rest of the way, like you got Jacksonville coming up here on Sunday. That is a Jordan Love needs to ball out kind of game. And then you got Detroit, where I think they are certainly vulnerable to passing attacks. They have the bye. Then it is Chicago, tough defense. San Francisco, I still think tough defense. Miami, man, defensively they're playing well. They've been in some really low-scoring games. So I'll say Miami, good defense. Detroit, you can score on. Seattle should be healthier by then. New Orleans, tough defense. Minnesota, tough defense. So these next couple of games, kind of the last gimmies of the year for Jordan Love to kind of get right on. At 5, it is the Minnesota Vikings. They take a couple of steps back here. Although I thought they played really well in that game, that there's just the top now is getting a little bit more difficult. And so when you do take a bit of a step back, there are teams right there to take those steps forward and kind of leapfrog you. At 4, it is Buffalo. Another it looks a little bit more lopsided than it was. That game was close in the first half, and then Buffalo just kind of takes it over in the second half. And so that's what they do. They can beat up on bad teams, and now they are going to run away, I think, with this division. And with Amari Cooper there, Keon Coleman stepping up in a big-time way as well, things are looking up out in Buffalo. At 3, it's Detroit. They had a bit of a slower start to the season, but boy, oh boy, have they got it on track now. They are looking fantastic in that win against Minnesota. And for Jared Goff to handle the pressure that was coming his way was just some top-notch stuff. At 2, it's the Baltimore Ravens. I still... Another great performance offensively for this team against Tampa Bay. I still have worries about the defense, but I have no worries about this offense. And at number 1, the best team in all the land gets better today as they go out and acquire DeAndre Hopkins. They are the Kansas City Chiefs. It is one of the top 3 defenses in the league. You have the most talented quarterback in the league. You have 2 of the best play callers in the league, 1 on offense, 1 on defense, that this team is just so complete and so fantastic and looking better each and every week. So those are your power rankings coming out of week 7, getting ready for week 8 in the National Football League. It is a big weekend in the world of people getting punched as UFC 308 goes down this weekend from Abu Dhabi. And so this is a time now where we can look at what else big is happening in the world of mixed martial arts right now. So let's look at that. UFC 308 goes down this weekend from Etihad Arena in Abu Dhabi. In the main event, it is a championship bout between Ilya Topuria and Max Holloway, with Robert Whittaker and Khamzat Chimaev coming up as the co-main event. So a very good card this weekend. But what else is happening in the world of MMA? As we get ready for this fight, every UFC pay-per-view week, I like to see what else is going on in the MMA landscape. And quite frankly, this was a miss from me not covering this sooner, but Francis Ngannou with a big win in the PFL last weekend. And this story continues to be absolutely amazing, and I think something that you need to make a movie out of. And honestly, when you think of making a movie out of a pro fighter's career, the culmination, the climax of it, if you will, would generally be building up to the crescendo, look at all these words, of winning a UFC championship in the ultimate proving ground, especially the heavyweight championship of the world. For Francis, it is becoming very apparent now that was just Act 2. This Act 3 has been something. So just think about, like, where he started. Again, like, just kind of breaking himself out of a desperate situation, finding his way to an MMA gym where they realize, oh, this guy can punch through a punching bag. He builds his way up from no training whatsoever, just being someone who is incredibly strong and working his way into the UFC and having all these raw skills, and oh my God, they found something. And now he's the heavyweight champion of the world. And as the heavyweight champion of the world, instead of being celebrated by this company, it is now this public fight and this public disagreement between the UFC and Francis Ngannou, this guy who has come from nothing to build his way up to this. And so he leaves, and everyone is like, fumbled the bag, man. You missed it. You missed your opportunity. He gets part ownership stake in PFL, and it becomes a huge part of their growth worldwide. And then out of that, he also has 2 gigantic boxing fights. Now, did they go his way? The second one, definitely not. The first, though, I think legitimized him forever and also got him generational wealth, which doesn't suck. And so then you come out of that, and there is the personal tragedy that he has, where his son unexpectedly passes away, remarkably young, and just this horrifying thing that no one should have to go through. And he says in the press conference that this, like, they were like, do you think you took enough time to grieve and all of those things? Like, how was it? He's like, look, a lifetime isn't long enough to grieve. Like, this is something that is going to stick with this man for the rest of his life. And with that hanging over him, does make this comeback into MMA, and then does get this win. It is an unbelievable story, and it is just how the UFC didn't market this better and didn't hold on to this guy is beyond me. I will never understand how they fumbled the bag with that. The rags to riches story. This is... It gets overused a lot, and I think just using it now might get me flagged for something. But is this not, and look, I'm a Canadian, so what do I know? Is this not the American dream? Guy is able to come to America and build this unbelievable generational wealth for himself just off of the blood, sweat, and tears and that he has. And nothing's handed to this guy. He just goes out and does it all on his own. Like, is this not what everything about what that country pertains to be? Is that not this? And then to get in this public pissing match with this guy, and then you hear him talk after, and he's not just like this brash fighter or anything. He is incredibly well spoken for what I think is his second language. At least, like he is incredibly well spoken. He's incredibly thoughtful, and he has, I think, a really good mind for the business of mixed martial arts and just business in general. He is, I think, like quite honestly and genuinely just an unbelievable human being. And so it's awesome to see him get back in the cage and get that thing done. And look, if this was boxing, we'd be talking about unified belts, right? Because you think about it, Ferreira was he unified the PFL and the Bellator championships. Francis Ngannou never lost the UFC heavyweight championship, which was also unified with the Strikeforce title and the Pride heavyweight championship. It takes a bit of a road to get there, but we do get there. And so this was for the lineal, whatever, every heavyweight belt that's mattered ever championship. And Francis does that. Now he's not going to get credit for it because the keepers of the history of the sport are douchebags, but this is just a remarkable story all the way through. I cannot get enough. He is very rapidly becoming one of my favorite, not just fighters, but athletes of all time. Also, Chris Cyborg, still getting the job done. She picks up a win at the PFL as well. There's nothing she can do to, I think, move herself up or down, pound for pound, all-time rankings. She is on the MMA Mount Rushmore for women's MMA and a true pioneer. And so it's awesome to see her continue to do the ass-kicking thing. Mini Moneymaker and Toxic, I do see you guys in the chat. We will get to the fantasy football stuff here again once we circle back around out of this UFC conversation. Up next for the Ultimate Fighting Championship is a date in Edmonton, so just up the road from me, based here in Calgary, and a couple really good fights at the top of this card, with Brandon Moreno taking on Amir Albazi in the main event. This one feels like it's set up for Albazi to become the number one contender in the flyweight division. Moreno has lost a couple in a row, including one to the champion, so he certainly feels like he is kind of stuck in a spot right now after an epic quadruple or whatever it's called, where he fought Davison Figueiredo a bunch. And so yeah, a couple extra edits in their Toxic, but no, he has these losses, and so to suggest that, oh well, a win here and he's back in a title contention, I don't think that's the case. I think that as long as Pantoja is the guy, I think that is going to be a difficult road for Moreno to get back to, and so he is at least a fight away from being a fight away, in my opinion. But for Amir Albazi, I think this is a real opportunity for him to go up against a former champion and pick up a victory and move into a title opportunity here. In the co-main event, huge fight for Erin Blanchfield and for Rose Namajunas. Blanchfield felt like she was on that title trajectory and then loses to Fiorot, and now she is looking to bounce back against probably one of the biggest names that this division has in Rose Namajunas. And for Rose, I think a lot of people had kind of written her off as done a few years ago, and she is able to battle back, and now she is looking to put together at least one more run in this division. So a really intriguing fight card coming up in Edmonton. There's going to be a lot more coverage on here and potentially elsewhere. We'll get into that, though, as it goes along. After that, it is Magny against Paredes. I will always take the opportunity to watch Neil Magny fight. Just one of those guys who I've been watching him for so long. Love what he can do. And then after that, we get to a big pay-per-view. It is UFC 309 back at Madison Square Garden. In the main event, John Jones taking on Stipe Miocic. Probably. We'll get more into that fight as it goes along, but holy hell is it time for that fight to happen just so we can move on with our lives and get that thing taken care of. So those are a couple of things coming up next in the fight world here in the UFC. There are a couple questions, like I said, in the chat, so let's hit that football button again and talk a little bit more fantasy football. All right. Toxic, who I'm confident is still here at least, asking in the chat, Chargers or Steelers defense? If we are just looking at a streaming option for the week, first, I know you're not playing me in the Vampire League, so I can give you this advice. And so, yes, Toxic's still here. Hi, Toxic. And so I feel comfortable in this, although, no, you're not even playing my wife either. I think you guys have taken care of that already. So, it's Deeds against Toxic. It is the two most active in the chats going head to head this weekend in the Vampire League. Gonna have to do something for that. That's gonna be a whole lot of fun there for sure. But let's see. The Chargers are playing the Raiders. That's a pretty good start. If we're looking at that, Steelers taking on the Bengalis. Coming. Oh no, geez, I have it way off. Sorry. Ignore what I just said. I was looking at how many weeks there are in a season before. Yeah, sorry about that. My bad. Looking at the wrong schedule. Ignore everything I just said. Chargers taking on the Saints. Again, decent option there. Steelers taking on the Giants. Well, there's your answer. I would go with the Giants. I think monitor the Saints situation this week, that they are getting a couple of guys back from injury. As we talked about on the waiver wire show, Taysom Hill is close to coming back. Chris Olave is kind of hanging around that area as well. So I would keep an eye on that one. And if everyone is still hurt, as I said earlier in the power rankings, New Orleans is genuinely one of the worst teams in the NFL. If all those guys remain hurt. So that becomes an option that is just too good to pass up, quite frankly. And then but for the Steelers, like the Giants offense isn't doing a whole lot. Malik Neighbors is great, but I think Mike Tomlin can game plan against one rookie wide receiver and be able to shut this thing down. So I would probably go with the Steelers in that spot and think that they just absolutely shut that down. Okay. Mini Moneymaker asking, what do we think about BTJ and Cooper Kupp for Jay Jettas? I'm assuming that's Justin Jefferson. Sorry, I am not as up on all of the nicknames sometimes. So apologies for being kind of the old dude here. But I like that side. I kind of like it for both, honestly. I do think Brian Thomas Jr. continues to progress as a really good receiver, and Cooper Kupp, I think will be solid. The one thing that you do worry about is that he is a little bit more on the a little bit further along on the aging curve, and so the injury issues that he has had may continue to cause some problems here, and so that would be a concern of mine on that side. But yes, if you are getting Justin Jefferson, he is the best receiver in the National Football League, and so you give up what it takes to get him. So I have no problem with either side of that trade. If I was the Jefferson side, I would maybe want a little bit more than I would be getting, maybe a little bit more reliability in that trade. But certainly, if that one works out well, like if Kupp stays healthy and the Thomas continues the progression that it looks like he's continuing on, then that does feel like a win for both sides. But I would certainly take the Jefferson side of that particular deal. But we are definitely getting down to that fantasy football trading time, right? Like during the intermissions of the Flames game last night, I was just firing a bunch of trade offers out there in one of my leagues, and so far only one of them has been rejected. So that's nice. So yeah, love that we get the fantasy football talk in here before we wrap up the show today. That is going to wrap the show up for today, though, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out. We are going to be back with the video game stream coming up at 3 o'clock today. We're going to be doing some baseball, that Blue Jays franchise that we've been building up now. Now that it's October, I feel like we should be getting to the point where we're putting a bow on that one and trying to finish that one up. So we're going to be doing that. I want to do a couple more like kind of gimmicky type things on the Twitch stream with like kind of the more current video games and stuff like that. And we want to do some retro ones as well. It's just fitting everything in right now with the busy schedule that I have made for myself. But I do think at least a few hours opening up here in a little bit as the CFL season starts to wind down. So should have a little bit more time. Should have a little bit more time finally to play some video games on the internet. So that's what's coming up here on Wednesday. And then also, if you're in Calgary, check me out on at Pazzi Pizzeria tonight. It is trivia night again, so I'm going to be at Pazzi here 7:30. That's in the Oliver Building, kitty corner to Rodney's Oyster House. And then on Thursday, I'm doing trivia at at Bitter Sisters. That is on Heritage Drive, just off of McLeod Trail. And then we'll be back here Friday with another 9 a.m. start for Couch Potato Diary on a Fights in Football Friday. So, Toxic, see you later. Everyone else, have a great day, and I'll talk to you guys in a few hours. Cheers.